Hello, welcome back, and you're finished with your first module 1. Now we need to go ahead and render it. I'm Jeff Byers, and I'm your instructor for NE 235, and this is lesson 8, part 8, where we take the stylistic face and we get it set and prepped for rendering. Okay, so what I need to have is a duplicate of this. We never want to get rid of the low poly. In fact, I would make duplicate copies of that. So just go click on it and go to Control D and then hit the W key and move it over to the side. So making duplicate copies is kind of a safe way to protect yourself, and as you make a duplicate, go ahead and add it to your layers. So when you do a duplicate, just go Control D and then click on the layer, Add Layer tab, and rename it whatever you'd like. It can be like original or whatever you want to type in. Alright, and then you're good to go. Save that so it's always there for you. Okay, so that's going to be the low poly, and this is going to be our high poly. Alright, so the next step with this is, because we're not going to damage anything by doing this, we're not going to use the high poly for anything, just for rendering and displaying your work. Okay, so to do that, you're going to hold down a space bar and go to Mesh, and then go down into Smooth and click on the option box. With this, you're going to do a subdivision level of 2. There we go. So now we've got a smooth shape that kind of shows the topology of your mesh, and if you have any creases or any bulging, it will show it at this point. Okay, doesn't look so good low poly, but it's always nice to work with low poly. The reason for that is that if it's high poly, we can't go back to and move things around. It'd be almost literally impossible to move these vertices around because they're so tightly knit. Now with these, I can move that vertex. We got a wide width of movement that we can use. So we will always want to keep our low poly no matter what. Even if we go into high poly, and we will eventually smooth our character at 1 so we can texture it, but we always want to keep a duplicate of the low poly, maybe 3 or 4 of them. Just make sure they're not on top of each other. Okay, that's the only thing you have to worry about, is forgetting that you duplicated it and not move it, okay, or put it in a layer. Alright, so with that said, now we need to add a shader to these. Okay, so let's go ahead and select them. Let's find a shader that will work out nice. We're going to use the AI standard surface shaders. So what I'm doing is I'm highlighting these, I'm right mouse button clicking over them and going to assigning new material. So assign new material. Click on that, and we can go down to right underneath Arnold shader and click on AI standard surface. With that, okay, what I would do next is select these and make sure you're in the modeling tab, your shelf, and click on delete by type history, and you probably want to freeze transformations as well. With that done, go to AI standard surface. The weight should be all the way to 1, and we're going to do a color something like aqua. Okay, just basically, I'm not going to go in here and spend too much time, so just aqua, it's fine. And with that done, what you want to do is you want to we're going to go ahead and render the way it is right now, the roughness at 0.2 and 1.5, and we'll go through materials a little bit later. But right now we just want to get this done and do a quick job and get this render out to me as soon as possible. So we want to kind of have a try to get a perspective view. They can't be overlapping, got to have a little space between them, and I want to be able to see the topology really well. Okay, alright, so with that said, the renders will be something like this. We want to make sure that you get my screenshots first. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, even though my screenshots on the web, on Canvas, my examples are gray, I'm okay with them being this color. That's fine, doesn't matter. So the idea is get a full screen, and in here go to, just type in S for snipping tool. I went into the search bar here, at the very bottom and hit S, and then that comes up with the snipping tool. Okay, open that up, and then you'll see something like this, and then you go to mode and go to rectangular snip, and I'm just going to go ahead and move this out of the way a little bit, and just with my left mouse button held down, I'm just going to go ahead and take a screenshot of this. Okay, and then I'm going to go to File, Save Scene As, and it doesn't matter, let's go in here to desktop, and we can name them, what do I want them to be named here? I think your first name, last name, first name, last name, and then we're going to put Annie 235 shade, and just do 01 JPEG file. Click Save and click Off, and then we're going to do Wireframe on Shaded. So you just click on this guy right here, Wireframe on Shaded, right there. Okay, and do the same thing. Go into the search bar, hit S, snipping tool, and we'll do the exact same thing with this rectangular snip. And that will take care of our 2 screenshots. Save as, do the same thing, go into desktop, and this time we're going to call this Wireframe. There we go, and click Save. Perfect. And so you're done with that. I would just save them to your desktop. We can turn off the Wireframe on Shaded now. And now we're ready for render. So what we're going to do for rendering is very simple. We're going to make sure that we have Arnold on. So if you don't see Arnold when I click on the Renders tab and you don't see it in here, then you need to go into your Windows, Settings Preferences, and Plugin Manager, and make sure you auto-load everything in here. Okay? And then click Refresh, and you're good. And so now you should be able to see that up in here when you go into render settings, you can go to Arnold. So we need that renderer selected. Okay. We're going to do preview render, so everything's going to be basically defaulted. Okay. So I'm going to go to Commons tab, and we're going to scroll down, and we are going to change the presets to HD 1080. Okay. Nothing else is going to be selected. Everything's defaulted. Click off, and then we're going to go into the Arnold. If you look for Arnold up here, your tab may be somewhere else. You can click on Arnold here, and we want to select this guy right here, which is our sky dome. Okay, so I'm going to click on that guy, right? And in here, you can see the attributes show up. We want the intensity to be something like 0.6 for intensity. Exposure, that would be 0.6. We're going to have the same intensity and exposure the same. Resolution, we're going to have it at 1000, and everything else looks good. Okay. The only thing I want to change here is because our masks are blue, or excuse me, aqua, we don't want that. We want a background to be black instead of white, so we can see them a little bit better. Now, in my examples, I have gray, so we could do gray 0.15 would probably work. Okay, that would give us a dark gray. And so let's take a look and see what we have. So we got everything set up, and you just want to click on render. I'm going to pause this because it may take some time. Okay, the render's done. It took only 12 seconds. You can see we're not seeing much here. I mean, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. That's what you're going to see as well on mine. And then you see this, and it's pretty flat. So we need to add another light to get some shadows. Okay. And my render, I have it black. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click off here. Okay, and I'm going to select this again. You can marquee select the background. That's the dome. We're going to change this to 0, and this will really make things pop out. Also, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to Create at the top menu bar and go down to Lights and click on Directional Light. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm not sure where the directional light is, way down here, so I'm going to move that up, and I'm going to scale it. It's okay to scale the directional light a little bit. Alright, so we're going to kind of rotate it around like this a little bit. And this takes some time to get this just right. You can also use the Arnold renderer, okay, when you're doing this, getting it all set up. And that will help you get your lights lined up. Okay, so as I rotate that, you can see that it's updating. And mine's going to be really slow because I'm using Camtasia, and that uses a lot of power. Okay, let's bring that over this way a little bit. You can see my shadows right here. I kind of want to have a little bit of a shadow here. Okay, bring that down a little bit so we get some shadows. That's really important. Okay, so with that done, what I'm going to do is I kind of know what I need to do now. I got my shadows set up, and if you want to do it just like mine, exactly like mine, then you can look at my numbers here. You can pause the video and you can do all these numbers that you want. If you want to have the exact, so pause the video if you need to, and recreate, just kind of go in there and type these numbers in. Alright, I'm going to keep going. So the thing is, the background is way too bright, so it's blowing everything out. So what we want to do with that is we want to bring that down to something like 0.3 or 4. Okay, sounds like a lot, and it will darken it up a little bit, but we still have our lights in here, and I want to change the samples to 2. Okay, we also want to soften this. We also want to soften the light shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off of here. We're good there. So what I'm going to do here now is into the light. Make sure I select the light and go into Arnold. And here I'm going to use a color temperature. We're going to go about 6,000. That gives us a little bit warmer than white. And then we're going to have exposure on this light to be 1. That's important. And then the exposure, the intensity is 1, the exposure is at 1. The angle is going to give us kind of soft shadows. Okay, so we're going to do 2 on there. I'll give it soft shadows. We want it to cast shadows, right? So go ahead and pause the video so you can get these numbers correct. And then we're going to move on. Alright, so let's go ahead and do another render. Go to the top here. Let's do another full render. I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, you can see our renders are looking much better. This is normal for you get these weird shadows. They're called faceting shadows. That means there's following the topology. It doesn't know what to do. The topology is not smooth enough. But you can see in here that it looks much better, a lot smoother. Okay. Now at this point, I like what I see. In my renders, I've got some hot spots in here, and if you want to see those a little bit more, you can experiment with those, but these are just fine. I'm okay with seeing that. You just need to get your camera closer. So let's go ahead and close, and we're going to go ahead and do a couple things. Okay, we got HD 1080 all set up. So what we need to do now is we need to go in here to get the mask, or excuse me, the render mask on, and it's going to go ahead and zoom in, render gate I mean, and we're going to go into click on Safe Title and Safe Action. So I usually go in there and make sure they're within the Safe Title and Safe Action, and I never go outside of that. So if I do something like that, that will work. We need headroom on top and bottom, and we want to center these the best we can. Okay. Right, when we do a full render too as well, I know this is really plain Jane, and usually I spend a lot more time on lighting, but tonight, or today, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and just keep it very simple. Alright, so basically set it up, and if we want to turn our field chart on, we can, to kind of center everything up, and then we're ready to turn the field chart off, and then we're ready for a final render. Well, a final render means that we need to go into our renderer and crank up the settings a little bit more. So our quality is under camera AA. So if we go somewhere around 5, that's plenty high, and then we're going to do the diffuse at 3 and specular at 3, and all of a sudden we're going to see our render times jump up tremendously. So be careful. We don't have many polygons in our scene, so it shouldn't be too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. You can pause the video to get those numbers, and then I'm going to go ahead and go into render one more time. I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, again, I'm really looking at this one, the high poly. You can see that that renders so much nicer than the low poly. I'm not going to grade you on these artifacts. That's perfectly normal. Obviously, I wouldn't have them if they weren't. So basically, to get rid of those, I'd have to move the light so it's not so prominent, you know, where you can see the shadows. So it's fine the way it is. Again, I'm not really going to be looking at this. I'm just going to be looking more with the shape and the form that you have here with the high poly. So don't worry about that. So go ahead. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Save Image, and go into the option box. And in here you'll see that it's on raw image. You want it on color managed image, view transform embedded, click apply and close. If you forget, you'll go into Photoshop, open it up, and it'll be really dark. So again, you need to go in here to save image option box and make sure color managed image is on, apply and close. Then what you'll need to do, you haven't saved it yet, what you need to do now is go to File, Save Image, you don't go into the option box this time, and go ahead and rename it. Okay, I usually put things right on the desktop. It's just easier that way. And then you can go ahead and save it as a JPEG. In here, File Type, find JPEG, and then you're going to go in here and just select something. And like in here, what I have here, and this will be a shape. Let's just put render. I'm sorry, render. And wireframe is next. And go ahead and save that. And go ahead and close this. And the next one will be super easy. So get that done. Let's select both of those guys. So click one and shift select the other. Right click over it, and go to Assign New Material again. And this time we're going to go to Arnold Shader, and we're going to go at the very bottom called AI Wireframe. And in here, this one's super easy. All you have to do is do one thing. Go to triangles to polygons. And that is it. Everything's set up for you. You just have to go edge type to polygons. And then everything's ready to go. You didn't move your camera, so you just go in here and render. And this one will render basically almost in real time. As you can see, I'm not pausing it or anything, it's rendering pretty quick. And she's all ready. There you go. Go to File, and then Save Image. You don't have to worry about going back in here again, it's all set up. And then you'll go back in here, and then in this one, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to do type in render on here. And so now I've got all 4 renders that I need. Go ahead and save. I usually save them to the desktop. I know where they're at. I don't have to search for them or anything. And that's it. Congratulations. Now you're ready to turn all your work in. Please watch the turn-in instructions on the next video. And have fun. Enjoy. And I'll see you guys in Module 2.